Have you ever asked yourself if it's normal to not feel like having sex? Or if something is wrong with you? Because this question doesn't come out of nowhere. It shows up after a series of small moments that start to build up. You avoid a touch, you pull away a little more, you come up with an excuse that seems harmless. And before you realize it, it's no longer about one specific day. It becomes something constant. And the hardest part is not just the lack of desire. It's the silence that comes with it. You look around and it seems like everyone else is fine. Like this doesn't happen to anyone else. No one talks about it, no one explains it. And you start carrying this question on your own. Am I the only one like this? And this question goes deeper than it seems. It begins to affect your identity, the way you see yourself as a woman, as a partner, as someone who used to feel, and now doesn't understand what is happening inside. But let me tell you something very clearly as someone who has seen this in many women and understands it deeply. This question does not mean something is wrong with you. What you are feeling is more common than it seems, but almost no one talks about it the right way. Many women go through this at some point in their lives. Some after years in a relationship, others after changes in their body, others without a clear reason they can explain. But there is one detail that changes everything. Just because something is common does not mean it is something you should accept. There is a big difference between something happening frequently and something functioning the way it should. And this is where most women get confused. Because when no one explains it, you start normalizing something that is actually a signal that something inside you has changed. And no, this has nothing to do with lack of love or failure in your relationship. It has to do with something much deeper that no one ever taught you to notice. And when you understand this, the way you see everything begins to change. Now, I want you to pay attention to something that has probably crossed your mind, but you never said it out loud. You start comparing yourself with other women, with who you used to be, with what you believe you should be feeling. And the more you compare, the more distant you feel. Because on the outside, everything seems normal. Relationships working, people happy, stories that never show this silent side. But inside you, there is a discomfort that doesn't fit into any of that. You try to understand. You try to find a reason. Sometimes you blame tiredness, routine, stress. Other times, you think it might be emotional. But none of these answers truly solve it. And this begins to create a dangerous feeling. The feeling that you are too different, as if you have lost something that won't come back. And here's a very important point that few people explain clearly. You are not different in the way you think. You are just interpreting what is happening in the wrong way. And this wrong interpretation makes you look in the wrong place. Search for answers in the wrong direction and try to fix it in a way that will never work. That is why, before any solution, you need to see what is really happening. And the truth might surprise you. Now comes the part that completely changes how you understand this. Yes, it is common to not feel desire at certain moments in life, but that does not mean everything is fine. And I know that sentence may feel uncomfortable, because part of you wants to believe this is just a phase, that it is normal, that you don't need to look too deeply into it. But there is a very simple principle we need to bring here. Everything that was created to function fully when it stops responding is signaling something. It is not condemnation. It is direction. Your body was not made to live disconnected from sensation. It was made to respond, to feel, to engage with what matters to you. When that response disappears, it is not because you stopped being who you are. It is because something in that process stopped being nurtured in the right way. This is where most women get lost, because they start treating this as purely emotional or worse, as a personal failure. But it is not. And the more you insist on this interpretation, the further you move away from the real root of the problem. And when you begin to look in the right place, everything starts to make sense in a much simpler way. Now, I am going to show you something that almost no one explains clearly. Most women believe that the lack of desire is emotional, that it is about connection, mood, or mental attraction. But in reality, what is happening is much simpler and at the same time, much more overlooked. Your body stopped responding. And when the body does not respond, the mind starts creating stories to explain it. You think it is tiredness. Then you think it is routine. Then you begin to question your relationship. But the truth is that in many cases, your body is simply not receiving the right kind of stimulation to react. And here's an essential point. Desire does not start with wanting. It starts with response. If your body does not feel, your mind will not engage. And this creates an inversion. You try to want before you feel. And that never works. Because the body does not follow obligation. It responds to stimulation. And when that stimulation does not happen in the right way, it simply shuts down. And the longer you go without that response, the harder it becomes to recover it naturally. But understanding this is not meant to worry you. It is meant to give you clarity. Because the moment you understand that it is not lack of desire, but lack of response, you start looking in the right direction. And that changes everything you need to do next. Now let me show you what happens when this is not understood the right way. You begin to enter a cycle that feels invisible, but it pushes you further away from yourself. You don't feel, so you avoid. When you avoid, you feel guilty. And when you feel guilty, you distance yourself even more. Do you see how this closes in on you? And this cycle does not only affect intimacy, it starts affecting your self-esteem, the way you see yourself in the mirror, the way you position yourself in your relationship. You begin to see yourself as someone who is failing at something that should feel natural. And that is not fair to you, because no one taught you how to understand what is happening. No one explained that your body needs the right stimulation to respond. So you try to fix with effort what should be fixed with understanding. And the more you force yourself, the more your body shuts down. Because it does not respond to pressure. It responds to the right environment. And while that environment does not exist, the sensation does not return. And without sensation, there is no desire. Now think about this. If you keep going through this cycle, waiting for something to change on its own, how long do you think it will take? And more importantly, how much will this continue to affect the way you see yourself? That is why there comes a moment when you need to stop trying in the same way and start seeing this from a new perspective. Now comes the shift I want you to take with you. You did not lose your desire. You lost your response. And when you truly understand this, the guilt starts to leave the place where it never should have been. Because this is not about you not wanting. It is about your body not being able to respond the way it used to. And that completely changes how you position yourself in this situation. You stop blaming yourself. You stop forcing yourself. You stop trying to fix in your mind what depends on your body. And you begin to look at the right point. Your body needs to be awakened again. Not with pressure, but with the right stimulation. And here is a very important principle. The body responds to what is activated. If there is no correct stimulation, there is no response. Simple as that. And this has nothing to do with you losing who you are. It has to do with a process that needs to be adjusted. And when you begin to see it this way, something changes inside you. You move from frustration to understanding. And this understanding opens the path to a real solution. Because now you are no longer guessing, you are beginning to understand. And when you understand, you start acting differently. Now that you understand this, the question changes. It is no longer what is wrong with me. It becomes something else. What does my body need to respond again? And that is the right question, because the answer is not in trying harder. It is not in waiting for desire to appear out of nowhere. And it is definitely not in adapting to a life where you no longer feel. There's a practical path, simple and much more respectful to yourself. The first step is to remove all pressure. As long as you associate intimacy with obligation, your body will continue to shut down. The second step is to return to the basics. Touch, without an end goal, without expectation, just presence. Because your body needs to relearn how to feel without defending itself. And the third point, which almost no one talks about, is the most important. You need to help your body respond, because in many cases, time alone does not fix it, and effort without direction does not either. There is a way to stimulate sensitivity in a natural way at the right moment that facilitates this response. And when the body begins to react, everything changes. You no longer need to convince yourself. You begin to feel. And when you feel, desire follows. Lightly, without effort, without that weight you have been carrying. And this is exactly where many women experience their first real shift. Because for the first time, they stop fighting themselves and start working with their own body. This is the point where I realized that understanding was not enough. I needed something that would help my body in the moment. Because one thing is knowing what is happening. Another is actually feeling again. And that is when I found something simple that made all the difference. A type of stimulation that works directly on sensitivity in the moment of touch. No waiting. No dependence on mood. No forcing. I started using a cream called Vigorelle, and what surprised me the most was not just the result, it was how natural it felt. Because for the first time, I was not trying to want. My body simply responded. And when that happens, your mind follows. You relax. You allow yourself. You become present again. And what felt distant begins to return naturally. Without pressure. Without guilt. Without that feeling of obligation. And that is something many women have not felt in a long time. The lightness of truly feeling again. If you made it this far, remember this. It is not that you do not want. Your body just needs help to respond again. And there is a solution. If you want to understand more about how it works, I left the link in the description. And if this kind of content helps you, subscribe to the channel. Because there is still so much no one has explained to you yet, and it can completely change how you see yourself. You are not broken. You just needed the right path.